Dolores's hand cracked across Naomi's face so hard her knees buckled and she hit the marble floor. "You people never listen," the housekeeper spat, standing over her. "Be grateful you even have this job." Naomi tasted blood. Her cheek burned like fire. But she didn't cry, she couldn't afford to. Not with Maya waiting at home. Not with rent 2 months overdue. 3 hours later, that same cheek would feel something else entirely. A kiss. Small. Innocent. From a billionaire's son who hadn't let anyone touch him since his mother died. And that single moment would unravel secrets Naomi had buried so deep even she had forgotten they existed. Comment below the city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Naomi pushed herself off the cold marble using the wall for support. Her hands trembled, her vision blurred. The cleaning cloths Dolores had shoved at her lay scattered across the floor like evidence of her humiliation. "I didn't mean disrespect, ma'am," Naomi whispered. Dolores was already walking away, heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. "Then stop talking and start scrubbing. Mr. Ellington wants the marble buffed before 8, all 3 guest rooms polished, laundry sorted, nursery prepared for inspection." "That's 3 people's work." Dolores stopped, turned. Her eyes were ice. "Did I stutter?" Naomi swallowed the words she wanted to say. She thought of Maya, 17 years old, waiting in their cramped Brooklyn apartment with college applications spread across the kitchen table and a refrigerator that had been empty for 3 days. She thought of the landlord's final warning slid under their door like a death sentence. She thought of her mother's voice years ago. "Pride won't pay the bills, baby girl. Survival will." So Naomi picked up the cleaning cloths, and she got to work. By 7:45, sweat soaked through her uniform. Her knees ached from scrubbing. Her arms burned from polishing. She'd finished the marble floors, 3 guest rooms, 2 loads of laundry, and was halfway through the brass fixtures when she heard it. Screaming. Not ordinary screaming. This was something else, raw, primal, the sound of a soul tearing itself apart. Naomi froze at the top of the spiral staircase. 2 women in pristine nanny uniforms stood outside the nursery, both with their hair ripped loose, both wiping spit from their faces. "He's a monster!" the first one cried. "He spat in my eyes! He bit me!" The second sobbed, holding up her wrist. Tiny teeth marks dotted her skin like a constellation of rage. Inside the room, something crashed. Glass shattered. The screaming intensified. Naomi stepped forward. "What's happening?" The first nanny whipped around. "Don't. That child has attacked every nanny who's tried to touch him. 7 of us. 7. He's 2 years old. He's possessed." Another crash. Another scream. Naomi looked around. Dolores was nowhere. The nannies were retreating toward the elevator. Security stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene with a toddler. No one was moving toward that door, except her. "Miss, don't," the second nanny warned. "He'll hurt you." But Naomi had heard that kind of cry before. In the mirror. In her sleep. In the hollow nights after her mother died and her father followed, and she was left with nothing but Maya and bills and a grief so heavy it crushed her chest. That wasn't the cry of a monster. That was the cry of someone who had stopped believing anyone would come. She pushed open the door. Chaos. Toys everywhere. A shattered lamp near the window. Glass glittering like scattered diamonds across the hardwood. And in the center of it all, a small boy. Blonde curls matted with sweat. Face red and blotchy. Tiny fists clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Trey Ellington. 2 years old. Screaming like the world had ended and no one had bothered to tell him. He spotted her. His wild blue eyes locked onto her brown face, her gray uniform, her trembling hands. For 1 second, the screaming stopped. Then it started again, louder than before. Naomi didn't run. She knelt. Glass crunched under her knees. She didn't care. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay, sweetheart." Trey screamed at her, his face twisted with rage, with terror, with something she recognized deep in her own bones. She closed her eyes, and she started to hum. A hymn, old and slow. The one her grandmother used to sing on summer nights in Georgia, back when the world was smaller and kinder and smelled like magnolias after rain. The notes drifted through the chaos like smoke. Trey's screaming faltered. His fists loosened. His breathing slowed. Naomi kept humming, low, steady, like a heartbeat, like a promise she didn't know she was making. And then Trey took one step toward her, then another. This boy, this broken, raging, spitting boy, who had driven away 7 trained professionals, who hadn't let a single person touch him in 8 months. He walked straight to the black cleaning woman kneeling on his floor. He lifted his small hands, and he pressed his cheek to hers. Naomi stopped breathing. Her eyes burned. Her cheek, the same cheek Dolores had slapped 2 hours ago, felt something entirely different now. Warm, soft, innocent, a kiss. Trey pulled back and looked at her with eyes suddenly impossibly calm. Then he wrapped his tiny arms around her neck and held on like she was the last safe place in the world. Behind them, the doorway filled with stunned faces. The 2 nannies, security, a junior staffer with her clipboard frozen in midair. Then a voice, deep, sharp, cracking with shock. "What the hell?" Everyone turned. Marcus Ellington stood in the hallway. Tall, dark hair combed back. Charcoal suit that cost more than Naomi's yearly salary. His face was usually controlled, unreadable, the face of a man who ran a billion-dollar empire without breaking a sweat. But right now, his jaw hung open. His hands trembled. His eyes were fixed on his son, the son who hadn't let anyone touch him since the day they buried his mother. The son who was now clinging to a cleaning woman like his life depended on it. "He just kissed her," Marcus whispered. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Marcus stepped into the room slowly, his footsteps silent on the carpet. He stopped 3 feet away, staring at the scene like he was watching a miracle he couldn't understand. "Who are you?" Naomi rose to her feet, still holding Trey. The boy's fingers gripped her uniform so tight the fabric bunched in his fists. "Naomi Carter, sir. I'm the cleaning staff." Marcus's jaw tightened. He stared at his son, at the peaceful expression on Trey's face, at the way his breathing had steadied, at the way he'd buried his face in this stranger's shoulder, like he'd finally found what he'd been searching for. "He's never done that before," Marcus said. His voice cracked. "Never. He hasn't let anyone touch him since—" He stopped, swallowed. "Since Helena. Since my wife died." Naomi didn't know what to say. She held Trey tighter, feeling his heartbeat against her chest. Dolores appeared behind Marcus, her face pale with something that looked like fear. She opened her mouth to speak. Marcus raised his hand. "Everyone out, now." The room emptied in seconds. Only the 3 of them remained. Marcus paced in front of the window, running his hand through his hair. 8 months, he said. 8 months of specialists, therapists, the best nannies money can buy, and nothing. He screamed at all of them, spat at them, bit them. He turned to face her. "And then you walk in a cleaning woman, and he kisses you." Naomi shifted Trey's weight on her hip. "I didn't do anything special, sir. I heard him crying, and something in me couldn't walk away." "Why not?" She hesitated. "Because I know what it feels like. To scream and have no one come." Marcus went still. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. "The accident was last winter," he said quietly. Helena was driving Trey to a checkup. Black ice. The car flipped 3 times. His voice thinned. "She died on impact. Trey was in the back seat. Physically he was fine, but something inside him broke." "I'm sorry," Naomi whispered. "Everyone's sorry." Marcus's voice hardened. "Sorry doesn't make him sleep through the night. Sorry doesn't stop the nightmares. Sorry doesn't bring his mother back. Trey stirred against Naomi's shoulder, making a small sound. She rubbed his back instinctively, and he settled. Marcus watched this with an expression she couldn't read. I want to offer you a job, he said. Naomi blinked. Sir. Live-in nanny, starting immediately. I'm not qualified. I don't have certifications. I don't need certifications, Miss Carter. I need someone who can reach my son. He stepped closer. You did something in 5 minutes that 7 professionals couldn't do in 8 months. I don't care if you have a degree. I care about results. But your housekeeper, I'll handle Dolores. Naomi's hand drifted to her cheek. The sting had faded, but the memory hadn't. Marcus noticed. His eyes narrowed. Did she do something to you? Naomi hesitated. Miss Carter. It's nothing, sir. It's not nothing. His voice went cold. If she laid a hand on you, it doesn't matter. It matters to me. The words hung in the air between them. Naomi met his eyes. People like me don't get offered jobs like this, Mr. Ellington. Not in penthouses. Not by billionaires. We get offered brooms and mops and the back entrance. Then let me offer you something different. Why? Marcus looked at his son, peaceful now, almost asleep against Naomi's shoulder. Because Trey sees something in you, he said. And I've learned to trust what my son sees, even when I don't understand it. Naomi felt the weight of his words settle into her chest. She thought of Maya, of rent, of survival. She thought of the boy in her arms clinging to her like she was the only solid ground he'd found in 8 months of drowning. Okay, she said. I'll try. Marcus nodded. Good. I'll have a room prepared for you tonight, next to Trey's nursery. He turned to leave, then stopped. Miss Carter. Yes, sir. Thank you. His voice was rough. For not walking away. Naomi stepped into the hallway. Dolores was waiting. The older woman's face was twisted with something ugly, jealousy maybe. Or fear. The fear of someone watching their territory invaded. Don't get comfortable. Dolores hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. You're a novelty. A distraction. When he gets bored of you, and he will, you'll be back on your knees scrubbing toilets. Naomi didn't flinch. Maybe, she said. But right now, I'm the one he wants holding his son. She walked past Dolores without another word. Behind her, a small voice called out, Mama! Both women froze. Naomi turned slowly. Trey stood in the nursery doorway clutching his stuffed lion. His eyes were fixed on her. Not on Dolores. Not on anyone else. Just her. Mama, he said again. Dolores's face went white. Naomi knelt down, her heart breaking and healing in the same moment. No, baby, she said softly. I'm not your mama. I'm Naomi. I'm here to help you. But Trey shook his head, and he ran straight into her arms. That night, Naomi sat on the edge of her new bed, staring at the photo of her parents. The room was bigger than her entire Brooklyn apartment. The sheets were softer than anything she'd ever touched. Outside the window, Manhattan glittered like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. She should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt terrified. Because something was stirring inside her. Something she'd buried years ago beneath layers of grief and survival and forgetting. A memory she couldn't quite reach. A weight she couldn't quite name. Down the hall she heard Trey crying softly in his sleep. She got up. She went to him. And when she started humming that old hymn, he settled against her chest, and finally went still. She sat with him for hours, rocking gently in the darkness, watching the city lights blur through the window. She didn't know it yet. But across town, in another penthouse, equally expensive and infinitely colder, someone was already making phone calls. Someone who had been watching the Ellington family for years. Someone who had just heard about the black cleaning woman who had walked in off the street and stolen the heart of a billionaire's son. And someone who knew exactly how to destroy her. Because Victoria Hale had made a career out of destroying people. And Naomi Carter had secrets. Secrets buried so deep that even Naomi herself had forgotten they existed. Secrets that were about to come crawling back into the light. The first week passed like a dream Naomi was afraid to wake from. Every morning, Trey would pad down the hallway in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed lion, and knock softly on her door. Not Dolores's door. Not his father's door. Hers. Mimi. He'd say the name he'd invented for her because Naomi was too many syllables for his 2-year-old tongue. Mimi up. And every morning, Naomi would scoop him into her arms, carry him to the kitchen, and make him breakfast, while he sat on the counter, swinging his legs and watching her with those big blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Marcus noticed everything. He started coming home earlier, canceling meetings, finding excuses to linger in the kitchen, while Naomi fed Trey his oatmeal. "He's eating," Marcus said one morning, his voice rough with disbelief. "He's actually eating without screaming." Naomi smiled, wiping a smear of banana from Trey's cheek. He just needed someone to be patient with him. 7 nannies weren't patient. 7 nannies were scared of him. Kids know the difference. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. "Where did you learn that?" Naomi shrugged. "I raised my sister. Our parents died when she was 12. You figure things out fast when there's no one else to figure them out for you." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "I'm sorry," he said, "about your parents. Don't be. They loved us while they were here. That's more than a lot of people get." Trey reached up and grabbed a fistful of Naomi's hair, giggling. She pretended to be trapped, making exaggerated struggling sounds until he dissolved into laughter. Marcus watched them with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Mimi silly," Trey announced. "Mimi is very silly," Marcus agreed. And for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled. Really smiled. The kind of smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look 10 years younger. Naomi felt something flutter in her chest. She pushed it down immediately. This wasn't her life. This wasn't her world. She was here for Trey. That was all. But that night, after Trey was asleep and the penthouse had grown quiet, she found Marcus in his study, staring out the window at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. He turned. "Never can. Not since Helena." Naomi hesitated. "I could make tea. My grandmother always said tea fixes what sleep can't." "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She was. Died when I was 16. Cancer." Marcus winced. "You've lost a lot of people." "Everyone loses people. The question is what you do after." She paused. "Do you want the tea or not?" He almost smiled. "Sure." They sat in the kitchen, 2 strangers from different worlds, drinking chamomile tea at midnight while the city hummed below them. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Depends on what it is." "Why did you really take this job? You could have said no. Most people would have run the other way after seeing Trey's meltdown." Naomi wrapped her hands around her mug, feeling its warmth seep into her palms. "I saw myself in him," she admitted. "After my mother died, I fell apart. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, pushed everyone away. I thought if I screamed loud enough, the pain would stop. Did it? No. But eventually someone held on anyway. My grandmother. She just sat with me night after night, singing hymns until I ran out of tears." Naomi looked up. "That's what Trey needs. Someone who won't let go." Marcus set down his mug. "Thank you, Naomi." It was the first time he'd used her first name. She felt it land somewhere soft and unexpected. "You're welcome, Marcus." They sat in silence after that, but it wasn't awkward. It was something else. Something that felt dangerously like the beginning of trust. The next morning, the peace shattered. Naomi was helping Trey into his coat for a walk in Central Park when Dolores appeared, her face twisted with barely concealed fury. "There's someone here to see Mr. Ellington," Dolores announced. "His sister-in-law." Before Naomi could respond, a woman swept into the foyer like a cold wind. Victoria Hale was everything Naomi was not. Tall, blonde, dressed in a winter white coat that probably cost more than Naomi's annual salary. Her makeup was flawless. Her posture was impeccable. And her eyes, pale blue, almost colorless, were the coldest Naomi had ever seen. Victoria stopped when she saw Naomi holding Trey. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "So you're the one." Naomi straightened. "Excuse me." "The maid who sings lullabies." Victoria's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I've heard so much about you." Trey pressed closer to Naomi, his fingers gripping her coat. Victoria noticed. Her eyes narrowed. "Trey, darling," she cooed, reaching toward him. "Come give Auntie Victoria a hug." Trey buried his face in Naomi's shoulder. "No," he said. The word was small but firm. Victoria's mask slipped for just a second. Naomi saw the flash of rage beneath it, hot and ugly and dangerous. Then the mask was back. "He's always been shy," Victoria said lightly. "Helena used to say he'd grow out of it." "He's not shy," Naomi replied. "He's careful. There's a difference." Victoria's eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Victoria smiled. It was the kind of smile that promised nothing good. "I see," she said. "You're one of those." "One of what?" "The type who thinks she's special, who thinks because a child clings to her she's somehow important." Victoria stepped closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "Let me explain something to you, miss. What was it, Carter?" "Naomi Carter." "Miss Carter." Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper meant only for Naomi's ears. "I've seen your type before. You worm your way into vulnerable families. You make yourself indispensable. And then, when you've gotten what you want, money, status, access, you disappear, leaving wreckage behind." Naomi's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not here for money." "Of course you're not." Victoria laughed softly. "You're here because you care, because you have a gift, because God sent you to save this broken little family." She tilted her head. "How noble. What do you want, Ms. Hale?" "I want what's best for my nephew, and what's best for him is family. Real family. Not some stranger off the street who happened to hum the right tune." Trey whimpered against Naomi's shoulder. Naomi felt her protective instincts flare. "You're scaring him." "He's family. He should be scared of you." Before Naomi could respond, Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs. "Victoria." His voice was flat. "I didn't know you were coming." Victoria turned, her entire demeanor shifting. The coldness melted into warmth. The threat dissolved into sisterly concern. "Marcus, darling, I heard about the new arrangement. I had to see for myself." She glided up the stairs and kissed his cheek. "You hired a cleaning woman to raise my nephew." "I hired someone who can reach him, something 7 certified professionals couldn't do. She has no qualifications. She has results." Victoria's smile tightened. "Results can be manufactured. Trust me, Marcus. I've been in this family long enough to know how these stories end." "And how do they end, Victoria?" "Badly." She glanced back at Naomi, her gaze razor sharp. "For everyone." Victoria stayed for lunch. Naomi kept Trey in the nursery reading him stories, trying to ignore the murmur of voices from the dining room below. But she could feel the tension seeping through the walls like poison. At one point, Trey looked up at her with worried eyes. "Bad lady," he said. Naomi's chest tightened. "What do you mean, baby? She makes the quiet hurt." Naomi didn't understand exactly what he meant, but she understood enough. Children sensed things adults had learned to ignore. "You're safe," she promised him. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Trey studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded and went back to his picture book. That evening, after Victoria had finally left and Trey was asleep, Marcus found Naomi in the kitchen. He looked exhausted, older than his 42 years. "I'm sorry about Victoria," he said. "She's protective. She's threatened by me." Marcus blinked. "You don't sugarcoat things." "Would you prefer I lie?" He almost smiled. "No. I've had enough lies to last a lifetime." Naomi set down the dish she'd been drying. "What does she want, Marcus, really?" He sighed, leaning against the counter. Helena was the golden child. Beautiful. Perfect. Everyone loved her. Victoria was always in her shadow. When Helena died, Victoria saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Control. Of Trey. Of the family trust. Of the Ellington name. He paused. "She's already filed paperwork questioning my fitness as a guardian. Claims I've been emotionally unstable since the accident." Naomi felt cold. Can she take Trey? Not easily, but she has lawyers, money, connections. She can make my life very difficult. His jaw tightened. "And now that you're here, she has a new angle. Me. An unlicensed caregiver with no formal training. A stranger I invited into my home within hours of meeting her. If she spins this the right way, she could make it look like I'm reckless, unfit, making decisions based on emotion instead of reason." Naomi's stomach dropped. "I should leave." "No. If I'm making things worse." "Naomi?" Marcus stepped closer. "You're the only thing making things better. Trey is eating, sleeping, laughing. For the first time in 8 months, my son is acting like a child instead of a ghost." His voice softened. "I don't care what Victoria thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks. You stay." She searched his face for doubt. Found none. "Okay," she whispered. "I stay." The next morning, Naomi took Trey to Central Park. The air was cold and clean, the sky a pale winter blue. Trey held her hand, his lion tucked under his other arm, as they walked along the winding paths near the lake. For a while, everything felt almost normal. Trey pointed at ducks, giggled at a dog chasing a ball, demanded to be lifted so he could see a street performer juggling on the corner. Then a black town car pulled up to the curb. Naomi's instincts screamed before her brain could catch up. The door opened. Victoria stepped out, wrapped in gray cashmere and leather gloves. She removed her sunglasses slowly like a predator, savoring the moment before a kill. "Fancy meeting you here," Victoria said. Naomi pulled Trey closer. "What do you want?" "A conversation, woman to woman." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I think you made yourself perfectly clear." "Did I?" Victoria stepped closer. "Let me be clearer then. I know what you are, Miss Carter." Naomi's heart skipped. "And what's that?" "A survivor. A hustler. Someone who's been knocked down enough times to know how to spot opportunity when it walks through the door." "I'm not—" "Please." Victoria held up a gloved hand. "Don't insult my intelligence. I've done my research. College dropout. Defaulted student loans. 4 addresses in 5 years. Mother dead. Father dead. Younger sister you can barely afford to feed." She paused. "You're desperate. And desperate people do desperate things." Naomi's blood ran cold. "You investigated me. I investigate everyone who gets close to my family. It's called due diligence." Victoria leaned in, her voice dropping. "But here's what puzzles me. There's a gap. Summer of 2018. 2 months where you simply disappeared. No job, no apartment, no records at all." Her eyes glittered. "What happened during those 2 months, Miss Carter?" Naomi couldn't breathe. Summer of 2018. The worst months of her life. The months when everything fell apart. When she lost her mother, then her father, then herself. The months she couldn't remember. "I don't know what you're talking about," she managed. "Don't you?" Victoria smiled. "That's interesting. Because I have a feeling those 2 months hold something you'd rather keep buried. And I'm very, very good at digging things up." Trey tugged at Naomi's coat, whimpering. He could feel her fear. Victoria glanced down at him, her expression flickering with something that might have been genuine affection, or might have been calculation. "Take care of my nephew, Miss Carter," she said. "He's been through enough trauma already. It would be a shame if more were on the way." She turned and walked back to her car. The door closed. The car pulled away. Naomi stood frozen on the sidewalk, Trey clinging to her leg, her heart slamming against her ribs. Summer of 2018. What happened during those 2 months? Why couldn't she remember that night after Trey was asleep? Naomi sat on her bed staring at the wall. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. A video file. Grainy, black and white. Security footage from a hospital hallway. A woman in scrubs walking quickly. Behind her, a young woman in a hospital gown holding a newborn wrapped in a blanket. The young woman's face was blurry, but her body, her posture, the way she held her shoulders. It looked exactly like Naomi. Her hands trembled. The video ended. A message appeared below it. "There are things about you even you don't know. Want to find out what they are? Or should I tell Marcus first?" No name, no signature. Just the threat hanging in the air like a blade. Naomi dropped the phone like it had burned her. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. A hospital, a newborn, a woman who looked like her. What had she forgotten? What had she buried so deep that even she couldn't reach it? And who was going to make her remember whether she wanted to or not? She pulled her knees to her chest and sat in the darkness, shaking. Somewhere in this city, someone knew her secrets. Secrets she didn't even know she had. And they were coming for her. The next morning, Naomi woke with red eyes and a decision. She needed answers. Real answers. Not threats and shadows and blurry videos. She needed to find out what happened in the summer of 2018. She needed to call the only person still alive who might know. Lucille Holloway, her mother's oldest friend. The retired nurse who had helped them through those final, terrible months. Naomi picked up her phone and dialed. The phone rang 3 times. "Hello?" Lucille's voice was older now, thinner, but still warm. "Lucille, it's Naomi. Naomi Carter." "Naomi, sweetheart. Lord, it's been years. How are you? How's Maya?" "We're fine. We're okay." Naomi swallowed hard. "Lucille, I need to ask you something. About the summer my mother died." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "What do you want to know? What happened to me? After the funeral? There are months I can't remember. It's like they've been erased." More silence. Longer this time. "Lucille." "I was hoping you'd never ask about that," Lucille said finally. Her voice cracked. "I prayed you'd never remember." Naomi's heart stopped. "Remember what? Baby girl." Lucille took a shaky breath. "You had a breakdown after your mama passed. The grief, the stress, it was too much. You collapsed. They took you to the hospital." "I know that part. But what happened after? Naomi, tell me, please." Lucille was crying now. Naomi could hear it through the phone. "You were pregnant," Lucille whispered. "You didn't even know. The stress hid the symptoms. But when they examined you at the hospital, you were 7 months along." The world tilted. "What? You gave birth 3 weeks later. A boy. Healthy. Beautiful." Lucille's voice broke completely. "But you weren't well, baby. Postpartum psychosis. The grief, the hormones, your mind just shattered. You kept saying you couldn't do it, couldn't raise him, couldn't love anything ever again." Naomi couldn't speak, couldn't move. I arranged a closed adoption, Lucille continued. It was what you wanted, what you begged for. You made me promise never to tell you, said you wanted to forget, said it was the only way you could survive. Tears streamed down Naomi's face. Where is he? She whispered. My son, where is he? I don't know, sweetheart. The adoption was closed, sealed. You wanted it that way. Naomi dropped the phone. She had a son. Somewhere in this world there was a little boy with her blood in his veins. A child she'd given away. A piece of herself she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten he existed. And someone knew. Someone had found out. Someone was going to use it to destroy her. She sat on the floor of her room in a billionaire's penthouse, surrounded by luxury she'd never asked for, and she cried. For the boy she'd lost. For the woman she'd been. For the mother she'd never gotten to become. And for the war that was coming, a war she'd never seen coming, but was about to consume everything she'd finally started to build. Naomi didn't know how long she sat on the floor. Minutes. Hours. Time had stopped making sense. The phone lay beside her, Lucille's voice, still echoing in her head like a ghost that wouldn't leave. You were pregnant. You gave birth. A boy. You gave him away. She had a son. Somewhere in this world, walking and breathing and growing, there was a child she had carried inside her body. A child she had pushed into the world. A child she had looked at and decided she couldn't keep. And she didn't remember any of it. How was that possible? How could a woman forget giving birth? How could she erase something that fundamental from her own memory? But even as she asked the question, she knew the answer. She'd been broken. Shattered by grief, by exhaustion, by a loss so complete, it had cracked her mind open and let the darkest parts spill out. Her brain had done what it needed to do to survive. It had buried the unbearable. And now someone was digging it up. A knock on her door made her jump. Naomi? Marcus's voice concerned. Are you okay? You've been in there for hours. She wiped her face quickly, though she knew he'd see the evidence of her tears anyway. I'm fine, she called back. Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. You don't sound fine. Can I come in? She hesitated. Then, yes. The door opened. Marcus stepped inside, took one look at her sitting on the floor with swollen eyes and tear-streaked cheeks, and his face changed. What happened? Naomi shook her head. Nothing. I'm just... Don't lie to me. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, his eyes searching her face. Something happened. Tell me. She wanted to. God, she wanted to pour it all out, every terrible piece of it. But how could she? How could she tell this man, this billionaire who had trusted her with his son, that she had abandoned her own child, that she had a past so dark she'd had to erase it just to keep breathing? He would look at her differently. He would see her differently, and she couldn't bear that. I can't, she whispered. Why not? Because you'll hate me. Marcus's expression softened. Naomi, I watched my wife die. I spent 8 months watching my son scream himself hoarse because he couldn't understand why his mother wasn't coming back. I've seen things in this past year that would break most people. He reached out and took her hand. Whatever you're carrying, it's not going to scare me away. She looked at their hands, his large and steady, hers small and trembling. Victoria sent me something, she said finally. A video. From a hospital. There's a woman in it holding a baby. The woman looks like me. Marcus's jaw tightened. Victoria sent you this. Someone did. I don't know if it was her directly, but... Naomi took a shaky breath. I called someone. A family friend. She told me the truth. What truth? The words felt like razors in her throat. I had a baby. 6 years ago. After my mother died, I had a breakdown. I was pregnant, and I didn't even know it. I gave birth to a son, and Her voice cracked. I gave him away, and then I forgot. I forgot everything. Silence. She couldn't look at Marcus. couldn't bear to see the judgment in his eyes. But when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "You forgot because you had to survive." She looked up startled. "I know something about that," he continued. "After Helena died, there were days I couldn't remember, hours that just vanished. The mind protects itself when the pain gets too big to hold. But I abandoned him, my own son. You made a choice when you weren't capable of making choices. That's not the same thing as abandonment. The world won't see it that way. Victoria won't see it that way." Naomi pulled her hand back. "She's going to use this against me, against you. She'll tell everyone I'm unstable, unfit. She'll say you hired a mentally ill woman to care for your child. Let her try." "Marcus." "No." His voice hardened. "I don't care what she says. I don't care what anyone says. You are the only person who has been able to reach my son in 8 months. That matters more than anything Victoria can dig up. But the custody case will be decided by facts, by evidence, by what's best for Trey." He stood and offered her his hand. "And what's best for Trey is you. Nothing changes that." Naomi stared at his outstretched hand. For so long she had carried everything alone. The grief, the secrets, the weight of survival. She had learned not to lean on anyone because everyone she'd ever leaned on had either died or disappeared. But Marcus was still standing there, still offering. She took his hand. He pulled her to her feet. "We're going to fight this," he said. "Together. Whatever Victoria throws at us, we handle it. Agreed?" Naomi nodded slowly. "Agreed." But even as she said it, she knew the worst was still coming. The next morning, the first shot was fired. Naomi was feeding Trey his breakfast when Dolores appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face pale. "Mr. Ellington needs to see you," she said. "Now." Something in her tone made Naomi's stomach drop. She wiped Trey's face, handed him to Dolores, and walked to Marcus's study. He was standing behind his desk, holding a document, his expression carved from stone. "What is it?" she asked. He handed her the paper. She read it. Once, twice, 3 times. The words blurred together, but the meaning was clear. Emergency petition for custody review. Filed by Victoria Hale on behalf of Trey Marcus Ellington. The grounds: emotional instability of the primary caregiver. History of mental illness. Evidence of postpartum psychosis. Concerns regarding the safety and welfare of a minor child. Naomi's hands shook. "She filed this morning," Marcus said. "She didn't waste any time." "She knew." Naomi looked up. "She already had the information before she sent me that video. She was just waiting to see how I'd react. It's a tactic. Destabilize you emotionally, then hit you with the legal attack while you're off balance." Marcus's voice was tight with controlled anger. "My lawyers are already working on a response. We have a preliminary hearing scheduled for next week." "Next week?" "Emergency petitions move fast. That's the point." Naomi set the document down, her mind racing. What does she actually want? She can't really think she'll win custody. You're his father. She doesn't want custody. Not really. Marcus walked to the window. She wants control of Trey's trust fund, of the Ellington estate. Helena was the primary beneficiary before she died. When Trey turns 18, he inherits everything. But if Victoria can prove I'm an unfit guardian, she can petition to become his legal trustee. That gives her access to tens of millions of dollars. This is about money. It's always about money. He turned back to face her. Victoria has expensive tastes and a portfolio that's been hemorrhaging for years. She needs Trey's inheritance to maintain her lifestyle, and she'll destroy anyone who gets in her way. Naomi felt sick, including a 2-year-old, including anyone. The hearing was set for the following Thursday. Naomi spent the days between preparing meetings with lawyers, review sessions, practice questions designed to trip her up. Marcus's legal team was thorough, professional, relentless. But they couldn't hide their concern. The postpartum psychosis is the problem, lead attorney David Chen explained during one session. Victoria's team will argue it indicates a pattern of mental instability. They'll say you could have another episode. That Trey isn't safe with you. I've been stable for 6 years, Naomi said. You didn't even remember the episode until a week ago. That's not going to play well with a judge. Marcus cut in. What do we need to prove? That Naomi is mentally fit to care for a child, that her past episode was situational, not chronic, that Trey is thriving under her care. David paused. We'll need character witnesses, medical records, and ideally, a psychological evaluation that clears her for ongoing childcare responsibilities. Get it scheduled, Marcus said. Whatever it takes. Naomi sat in silence, feeling like a specimen under a microscope. Her entire life, every mistake, every wound, every secret she'd tried to bury was about to be dissected in a courtroom. And Victoria would be watching, smiling, waiting for her to break. The night before the hearing, Naomi couldn't sleep. She wandered the penthouse in the darkness, checking on Trey 3 times, making tea she didn't drink, standing at windows and staring at nothing. At 2 a.m, she found Marcus in the kitchen doing the same thing. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Not a chance. He poured her a cup of tea and slid it across the counter. How are you feeling? Terrified, she admitted. I've never been good at lying, and tomorrow I have to convince a judge that I'm not broken. You're not lying. You're not broken. Marcus. You're not. He set down his mug and looked at her directly. Broken people don't do what you do. They don't show up every day. They don't love children who aren't theirs. They don't hum hymns at 3 a.m. because a little boy can't sleep. You've seen me do that. I've heard you, through the monitor. He almost smiled. It's the most peaceful sound in this house. Naomi felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd been holding tightly for years. I'm scared I'm going to lose him, she whispered. Trey, I know he's not mine, but he feels like mine, and the thought of Victoria taking him away, of her using him as a pawn, that's not going to happen. You can't promise that. No, Marcus agreed. But I can promise I'll fight, with everything I have. Everything. He stepped closer. You're not alone in this, Naomi. Whatever happens tomorrow, you don't face it alone. She looked up at him. At this man who had lost his wife, who was fighting for his son, who had chosen to trust a stranger when he had every reason not to. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. The real me. Not the maid. Not the crazy woman with the secret past. Just me. Marcus reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. I've always seen you, he said quietly, from the first moment you walked into that nursery. The courtroom was cold, as Naomi sat at a long table with Marcus and his legal team, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Across the aisle, Victoria sat with her own attorneys, 3 of them all in suits that cost more than Naomi's car. Victoria looked immaculate, calm, confident. She glanced at Naomi and smiled. Naomi looked away. The judge entered. Honorable Ruth Patterson, late 60s, steel gray hair, reading glasses perched on her nose. She had a reputation for being fair, but ruthless. No one got past her with half-truths or emotional manipulation. We're here on an emergency petition filed by Victoria Hale, Judge Patterson began. Questioning the fitness of Naomi Carter to serve as primary caregiver for the minor child Trey Ellington. Ms. Hale's counsel may proceed. Victoria's lead attorney stood, tall, silver-haired, voice like honeyed poison. Your Honor, we're here because a vulnerable child is at risk. Trey Ellington lost his mother less than a year ago. In his grief, his father made an impulsive decision, hiring an unlicensed, unvetted woman to serve as Trey's primary caregiver. A woman with no childcare credentials, no references, and as we've recently discovered, a history of severe mental illness. He walked toward the judge holding a document. Medical records show that Miss Carter was hospitalized in 2018 following a psychotic episode. She gave birth to a child while in this state and subsequently surrendered the child for adoption. She claims to have no memory of these events, which itself suggests ongoing psychological instability. Naomi's face burned. The room felt like it was shrinking. "We're not here to punish Miss Carter for her past," the attorney continued smoothly. "But we are here to protect Trey. This child deserves stability, security, a caregiver whose mind can be trusted, and we submit that Miss Carter, however well-intentioned, cannot provide that." He sat down. David Chen stood. "Your Honor, the opposing counsel has presented a dramatic narrative, but narratives aren't evidence. The facts are, these Miss Carter experienced a single psychiatric episode 6 years ago, triggered by catastrophic grief, the death of both her parents within months of each other. Since that time, she has had no further episodes. She has held steady employment. She has raised her younger sister successfully. And most importantly, she has done something no one else could do. She has reached Trey Ellington." He gestured toward Marcus. Before Miss Carter arrived, Trey hadn't spoken in 8 months. He refused to eat. He attacked anyone who came near him. 7 trained nannies quit in the first 6 months. Specialists were baffled. His father was losing hope. David's voice softened. And then a cleaning woman knelt on a nursery floor and hummed a hymn her grandmother taught her, and a broken little boy walked into her arms. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. "Your Honor, we're not asking you to ignore Miss Carter's past. We're asking you to see her present, the woman she is now, the caregiver she has become. And we're asking you to consider what's truly best for Trey, not what's best for Victoria Hale's agenda." The judge nodded slowly. "I'd like to hear from Miss Carter directly." Naomi's heart stopped. David turned to her. "You're up." She stood on legs that felt like water, walked to the witness stand, sat down. Judge Patterson looked at her over her glasses. "Miss Carter, tell me about the summer of 2018. Naomi swallowed hard. Every eye in the room was on her. Victoria's gaze burned into the side of her face. "My mother died in May," Naomi began. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Cancer. I was with her at the end. I held her hand while she stopped breathing." She paused, steadied herself. "My father died 6 weeks later. Heart attack. The doctor said it was grief. I think he just couldn't imagine living without her." Judge Patterson's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. "I was 22 years old. I had a 17-year-old sister to raise and no money and no family left. And Naomi's voice cracked. "I fell apart. Completely. I don't remember most of that summer. I know I was pregnant. I know I gave birth to a son. But I don't remember any of it. My mind erased it because I couldn't survive it any other way." "And you gave the child up for adoption?" "Yes." "Why?" Naomi looked at the judge directly. "Because I was broken. And broken people break the things they love. I couldn't do that to an innocent baby. I couldn't let my pain become his prison. So I let him go. I let him have a chance at a life I couldn't give him." Silence in the courtroom. "Do you regret that decision?" the judge asked. Naomi's tears fell now quiet and steady. "Every day," she whispered. "But I don't think I was wrong. I think I did the only thing I could do to protect him, and I would do it again." Judge Patterson studied her for a long moment. "What about Trey Ellington? How do you see your role in his life?" Naomi wiped her face. "Trey didn't choose me. I didn't choose him. But somehow we found each other. And when I look at him, I see a little boy who lost his mother and doesn't understand why the world keeps hurting him. I see myself at 17 screaming into the void, waiting for someone to show up. She took a breath. I showed up, and I'm not leaving. Even if this court tells you to, Naomi met the judge's eyes. I'll respect whatever you decide, Your Honor. But you should know Trey isn't just a job to me. He's not a paycheck or a stepping stone. He's a child who needs someone to see him, someone to hold on when he pushes away, someone to sing when the darkness gets too loud. Her voice steadied. That's who I am. That's what I do. And if that makes me unfit in the eyes of the law, then the law and I disagree. The judge held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Thank you, Miss Carter. You may step down. Naomi walked back to her seat on shaking legs. Marcus reached out and squeezed her hand under the table. The judge shuffled through her papers. I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties, the medical records, the character references, the reports from the child advocate. She looked up. I find no evidence that Miss Carter poses a current danger to the child. Her psychiatric episode in 2018 was situational, not chronic, and there is no indication of ongoing instability. Victoria's attorney started to rise. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Judge Patterson's voice cut like a blade. I'm also troubled by the manner in which this petition was filed. The speed, the selective use of medical records, the apparent targeting of Miss Carter's past for purposes that seem more personal than protective. Victoria's face went pale. I'm denying the emergency petition, the judge continued. Mr. Ellington will retain full custody. Miss Carter will continue in her role as caregiver, pending a follow-up review in 60 days. She looked at Victoria. And Ms. Hale, I suggest you consider carefully whether your interest in this case is truly about your nephew's welfare or something else entirely. The gavel came down. Naomi couldn't breathe. Marcus turned to her, his face breaking into the first real smile she'd seen since the day they met. We won, he said. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Not yet, she whispered. But we're still standing. The victory lasted 3 days. 3 days of Trey's laughter echoing through the penthouse. 3 days of Marcus coming home early just to watch Naomi read bedtime stories. 3 days of something that felt dangerously close to happiness. Then the article dropped. Naomi was making breakfast when Dolores burst into the kitchen clutching her phone like it was a weapon. You need to see this, Dolores said. Her voice was different, not cold like usual, but urgent, almost protective. Naomi wiped her hands and took the phone. The headline hit her like a punch to the chest. Billionaire's nanny mental breakdown. Secret baby and the truth she's been hiding. Below it, her face. A photo someone had taken without her knowledge walking with Trey in Central Park, his hand in hers, both of them smiling. The article was worse than the headline. Every detail of her life laid bare. The hospitalization, the adoption, the postpartum psychosis, her defaulted student loans, her family's deaths. Even her sister Maya's name and school were mentioned. And at the bottom, a quote from an anonymous source close to the Ellington family. She's manipulating a grieving widower, using his vulnerable child to secure her own future. It's the oldest trick in the book. Naomi's hands shook so badly she dropped the phone. Who did this? She whispered. Dolores picked up the phone and looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. You know who. Marcus found out an hour later. He stormed into the penthouse with his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders at someone on the other end. I want the source traced. I want to know who leaked those medical records. That's a federal violation. Someone's going to prison for this. He hung up and turned to Naomi, who was sitting on the couch with Trey in her lap. The boy had sensed something was wrong and refused to leave her side. I'm so sorry, Marcus said. I should have protected you better. You can't protect me from everything. I can try. He sat down across from her. My PR team is drafting a response. We'll push back hard, threaten legal action against the publication. It won't matter. Naomi's voice was flat. The story's already out there. People have already decided what they think. Then we change what they think. How? Marcus leaned forward. By telling your side. All of it. On your terms. Naomi shook her head. I'm not ready for that. You might not have a choice. His voice softened. Victoria wanted you destabilized, scared, off balance. If you hide now, she wins. And if I speak and they tear me apart, then at least you went down fighting. Trey stirred in her lap, looking up at her with those big blue eyes. Mimi sad, he asked. Naomi forced a smile. Mimi's okay, baby, just tired. But she wasn't okay. And she wasn't sure she ever would be again. The comments section was the worst part. She knew she shouldn't look. Everyone told her not to look. But at 2 a.m, alone in her room while the penthouse slept, she couldn't help herself. She read them all. She gave away her own baby. What kind of monster does that? Gold Digger 101. Find a rich grieving widower and pretend to love his kid. Mental illness is no excuse. She shouldn't be near any children. I feel sorry for that little boy. He's going to wake up one day and realize the woman he trusted was just using him. Each comment was a knife. Each one found a wound she thought had healed and ripped it open again. She threw her phone across the room and buried her face in her pillow to muffle the sound of her crying. This was what Victoria wanted. This exact moment. Naomi alone in the dark, drowning in shame, questioning everything she thought she knew about herself. And it was working. The next morning, Marcus found her in the kitchen before dawn. You didn't sleep, he said. Neither did you. He sat down across from her. I've been thinking. About what? About how to end this. His jaw tightened. Victoria's not going to stop. She's going to keep digging, keep leaking, keep attacking until there's nothing left. Unless we take the fight to her. How? The Diane Clark show called. They want an exclusive interview, national television, prime time. Naomi's stomach dropped. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Marcus leaned forward. Victoria controls the narrative right now because you're hiding. Because the only stories out there are the ones she's planting. But if you go on national television and tell your truth, all of it, you take that power back. And what if I fall apart on camera? What if I can't get through it? Then you fall apart, Marcus said simply. And the world sees a real human being instead of a tabloid monster. Naomi stared at him. You really think this will work? I think it's the only thing that will. He reached across the table and took her hand. You're not alone in this, Naomi. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. She looked at their hands, at the way his fingers wrapped around hers like an anchor. Okay, she said finally. Let's do it. The studio was freezing. Naomi sat in a chair while a makeup artist dusted powder on her face and adjusted her hair. Beyond the bright lights, she could see the empty seats that would soon be filled with strangers. Strangers who had already formed opinions about her. Strangers who had read the articles and believed the worst. Marcus stood nearby watching her. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. If you want to walk away, we walk away. No questions. Naomi shook her head. I've spent 6 years running from the truth, hiding from it, burying it so deep I forgot it existed. She looked up at him. I'm tired of running. I know. Whatever happens out there, whatever they think of me, after I need you to know something. She took a breath. Trey saved me. When I walked into that nursery and he reached for me, something inside me woke up. Something I thought was dead. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to thank you for that. Marcus stepped closer. You don't have to thank me. You just have to keep being who you are. Before she could respond, a producer appeared. 5 minutes, Miss Carter. Naomi nodded, stood, straightened her shoulders. Let's go tell the truth, she said. Diane Clark was exactly what Naomi had expected, warm on camera, sharp beneath the surface. a woman who had built her career on getting people to reveal things they'd planned to keep hidden. The audience filled the seats, the lights blazed, the cameras rolled. Naomi Carter. Diane began, her voice carrying across the studio. The country has been talking about you for weeks. Headlines have called you everything from a gold digger to a mentally unstable con artist. What do you say to that? Naomi looked directly into the camera. I say they don't know me. They know a story someone else told about me. But they don't know the truth. Then tell us the truth. In your own words. Naomi took a deep breath. I grew up in Brooklyn. My parents were good people, hardworking, faithful, loving. My mother was a nurse. My father drove a delivery truck. We didn't have much, but we had each other. She paused. When I was 22, my mother got sick. Cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. I watched her die over 3 months, watched her shrink, watched her fade, watched her disappear. I held her hand when she took her last breath. The studio was silent. 6 weeks later, my father had a heart attack. The doctors said it was sudden, but I knew the truth. He died because he couldn't live without her. His heart just gave up. Diane leaned forward. That's an enormous amount of loss for someone so young. I didn't have time to grieve. I had a 17-year-old sister who needed me. Bills to pay. A life to keep together. Naomi's voice steadied. And I was pregnant. I didn't even know it. The stress, the exhaustion, I missed all the signs. By the time they admitted me to the hospital for what I thought was a nervous breakdown, I was 7 months along. A murmur rippled through the audience. What happened after that? Diane asked softly. I gave birth to a son. A beautiful baby boy. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. But I wasn't well. The grief, the hormones, the trauma, my mind shattered. I couldn't think straight. Couldn't take care of myself, let alone a newborn. I kept telling the doctors I couldn't do it. I couldn't be his mother. I would only hurt him. So you gave him up? I arranged a closed adoption. I asked them not to tell me his name, not to show me pictures. I wanted him to have a chance at a life I couldn't give him. She wiped her face. And then I erased it. All of it. I buried it so deep I forgot it ever happened. For 6 years I didn't remember having a son. Diane was quiet for a moment. Some people would say that makes you unfit to care for another child. Some people don't know what it's like to survive. Naomi's voice grew stronger. I'm not proud of forgetting, but I'm not ashamed of surviving. I did what I had to do to keep breathing, to raise my sister, to get up every morning when everything in me wanted to stay down. And Trey Ellington. How did you come to care for him? Naomi almost smiled. I didn't plan it. I was cleaning floors in his family's penthouse. I heard him screaming, the kind of scream that doesn't come from anger but from pain, from loss, from feeling like no one in the world understands. She paused. I walked into that nursery because I recognized that sound, because I'd made it myself years ago when I was screaming into the void and no one came. And he responded to you when he hadn't responded to anyone else. He did. I don't know why. Maybe he felt what I felt. Maybe he knew I understood him in a way other people couldn't. Naomi looked directly into the camera. That little boy is not a job to me. He's not a paycheck. He's a child who lost his mother and needs someone to see him, to hold him, to sing to him when the darkness gets too loud. That's what I do. That's who I am. And your son, the one you gave up, do you think about him? Naomi's tears fell freely now. Every day. I don't know his name. I don't know where he is, but I hope he's happy. I hope he's loved. I hope whoever raised him gave him everything I couldn't. Her voice broke. And if he ever sees this, if he ever wonders why his birth mother let him go, I want him to know I didn't abandon you. I saved you from me, from my brokenness, from the worst version of myself. She took a shuddering breath. I loved you too much to let my pain become your prison, and I would do it again. Silence in the studio. Then slowly the audience began to applaud. Not everyone, but enough. Enough people who saw something in her story that resonated. Enough people who recognized survival when they saw it. Diane reached over and took her hand. Thank you, Naomi, for your courage, for your truth. Naomi nodded, unable to speak. The cameras kept rolling. The audience kept clapping. And somewhere across the city, Victoria Hale watched from her penthouse, her face pale with fury. Because the narrative had just shifted. And she was no longer in control. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within hours of the interview airing, social media exploded. But this time the comments were different. She gave up her child to save him. That's not abandonment, that's love. I've been there. The grief. The breakdown. I see you, Naomi. Victoria Hale is the real villain here, weaponizing someone's trauma for money. This woman is stronger than anyone I know. The tide was turning, but Victoria wasn't finished. 2 days after the interview, Naomi received a package. No return address. No note. Just a manila envelope with something heavy inside. She opened it carefully. A photograph fell out. A little boy with curly brown hair and light brown skin standing in a park, holding a paper airplane. He was smiling the kind of smile that came from deep happiness, from security, from love. On the back, in neat handwriting, Elijah. Brooklyn. Your son. Naomi's knees buckled. She grabbed the counter to steady herself. Her son, her baby, grown now, 6 years old, alive, happy, and someone had found him. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Naomi, what's wrong? She couldn't speak. She just handed him the photograph. He looked at it, read the note. His face went dark. Victoria, he said. She's using him. Naomi's voice was barely audible. She found my son, and she's using him as a weapon. We don't know that. Who else? Naomi's voice cracked. Who else would do this? Marcus didn't have an answer. Naomi stared at the photograph, at the boy she'd given away, at the smile she'd never gotten to see. I need to find him, she whispered. I need to know he's safe. Naomi? She's escalating Marcus. First my medical records, then the interview. Now this. She looked up at him, her eyes blazing. What comes next? Does she show up at his school? Does she tell him who I am before I can? Does she traumatize another child just to get to me? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I'll have my people track the origin of the photograph, find out who took it, who sent it. And then we stop her. His voice hardened. For good. That night, Naomi sat in Trey's room watching him sleep. His small chest rose and fell in the peaceful rhythm of a child who finally felt safe. His lion toy was tucked under his arm. His lips were curved in a faint smile. She reached out and brushed a curl from his forehead. I'm going to protect you, she whispered, no matter what. She thought of Elijah, the son she'd never held, the boy she'd let go to save. 2 children now caught in a war they didn't understand. 2 boys whose lives depended on her finding the strength to keep fighting. She looked at Trey's sleeping face and made a decision. She would find Elijah. She would make sure he was safe. She would expose Victoria for exactly what she was. And if the world tried to tear her down again, she would meet it standing. Because she wasn't the same broken woman who had collapsed in a hospital bed 6 years ago. She was stronger now, harder now, and she was done running. Marcus's team traced the photograph in 48 hours. The man who took it was a private investigator named Anthony Connors, former NYPD, dishonorably discharged for evidence tampering. Now he worked for anyone willing to pay his rates, which were steep, but his methods were effective. And his most recent client was Victoria Hale. She hired him 6 weeks ago, Marcus explained, spreading documents across his study desk. Right after the first custody hearing, he's been tracking Elijah's family ever since, following them to school, to the park, taking photographs. Naomi felt sick. She's been watching my son for 6 weeks. It appears so. Has she contacted them? The adoptive parents? Not yet, but she's building something, ammunition for when she needs it. Naomi's hands curled into fists. What kind of person stalks a child to win a lawsuit? The kind who's about to lose everything. Marcus looked at her. Her financial situation is worse than we thought. She's leveraged to the breaking point. Without access to Trey's trust fund, she's facing bankruptcy within the year. So this is all about money. It's always been about money. Trey is just a means to an end. Naomi stood and walked to the window. The city stretched below her, indifferent to the battles being fought in its towers. I want to see him, she said quietly. See who? Elijah, my son. She turned to face Marcus. Not to take him, not to interfere with his life. I just need to see that he's okay, with my own eyes. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Are you sure that's wise? No, but I need to do it anyway. He nodded slowly. Then I'll arrange it. 3 days later, Naomi sat in the back of an unmarked car parked across from an elementary school in Brooklyn. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her palms were slick with sweat. Every cell in her body vibrated with anticipation and terror. Marcus sat beside her, his hand resting lightly on her arm. You don't have to do this, he said. Yes, I do. The school bell rang. Children poured out of the building, a flood of small bodies in colorful coats, backpacks, bouncing voices raised in the universal chaos of dismissal time. Naomi scanned the crowd, her breath catching every time she saw a boy with curly hair. And then she saw him. Elijah. He was taller than she'd imagined, 6 years old, but strong and sturdy, with her same brown skin and her mother's cheekbones. His hair was a riot of curls, just like hers had been as a child. He was laughing, chasing another boy across the playground, his paper airplane clutched in one hand. Naomi stopped breathing. That's him, she whispered. That's my son. 2 men waited by the gate. His adoptive fathers, she realized. One tall and bearded, the other shorter with kind eyes. They watched Elijah with the attentive love of parents who knew exactly how precious their child was. Elijah ran to them, and the shorter man scooped him up, spinning him around, while Elijah shrieked with delight. Naomi's tears fell silently. He's happy, she said. He's loved. He is. I made the right choice. Marcus squeezed her hand. You did. They watched for a few more minutes. Elijah showed his fathers something he'd made at school, a drawing maybe, or a craft project. They praised him enthusiastically, and he beamed with pride. Then they walked away, the 3 of them a family complete and whole. Naomi didn't try to follow, didn't try to call out, didn't try to insert herself into a life that had been built without her. She just watched until they disappeared around a corner. Take me home, she said quietly. Marcus nodded to the driver. As the car pulled away, Naomi looked back one last time at the schoolyard where her son had played. Thank you, she whispered. To him, to the universe, to whatever force had given her child, to people who could love him the way he deserved. Thank you for being okay. That night, Naomi made a decision. She found Marcus in his study, reviewing legal documents with his team. I need to talk to you, she said. Alone. The lawyers gathered their papers and left. Marcus leaned back in his chair. What is it? Naomi sat across from him. I want to go public again, but this time not just to defend myself. I want to expose Victoria. Everything she's done, the surveillance, the stalking, the weaponizing of my past and my son. That's risky. She'll fight back hard. Let her. I'm done playing defense. Naomi's voice was steady. She's been controlling this narrative from the beginning, leaking stories, planting evidence, making me look like the villain. But she's the one who's been stalking a 6-year-old. She's the one who's been violating privacy laws, She's the one who's been using children as weapons. Marcus studied her. What do you have in mind? A press conference. With evidence. All of it. The private investigator's records. The photographs. The paper trail leading back to Victoria. She paused. And I want Elijah's adoptive parents involved. If they're willing. They deserve to know their son has been surveilled. You'd have to contact them. I know. That means revealing yourself. To them. To Elijah eventually. Naomi's voice didn't waver. I know. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll make the calls. The meeting with Elijah's parents happened 2 days later. Naomi chose a neutral location, a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from cameras and crowds. Marcus came with her for support, but waited in the car. This was something she needed to do alone. David and Michael Torres arrived exactly on time. David was the tall one with the beard, a high school history teacher Marcus's investigators had learned. Michael was the shorter one, a pediatric nurse. They'd been together for 12 years, married for 8, and had adopted Elijah as an infant. They knew who Naomi was. She'd sent them a letter explaining everything before the meeting. They sat down across from her. Their faces were guarded, but not hostile. Thank you for coming, Naomi said. David nodded. Your letter was a lot to process. I can imagine. Michael leaned forward. We need to understand something. Why now? After 6 years, why are you reaching out? Because someone has been following your son. Naomi pulled out the photograph, the one Victoria had sent her. This was mailed to me anonymously, but I traced it back to a private investigator hired by someone who's trying to destroy me. She's been watching Elijah for weeks. David's face went pale. What? She's trying to use my past against me, and she found Elijah as part of that. She took photographs of him at school, at the park, without your knowledge or consent. Michael's hands trembled. Who would do something like that? Victoria Hale, the sister-in-law of my employer. She's been waging a campaign against me because I care for her nephew, a little boy, she wants control of for financial reasons. David and Michael exchanged looks. We read about you, David said slowly. The articles, the interview on Diane Clark. Then you know what I've been through, and you know I'm not here to disrupt your lives. Naomi's voice cracked. I didn't even know Elijah existed until a few weeks ago. I blocked out that entire summer, but now that I know now that someone is using him as a weapon, I couldn't stay silent. Michael reached across the table and touched her hand. We've always known his birth mother made a painful choice, he said softly. The adoption record said you were in crisis, that you wanted to give him the best chance possible. I did. I was broken. I couldn't take care of myself, let alone a baby. I thought... Naomi wiped her eyes. I thought letting him go was the only way to protect him from my damage. And you were right. David's voice was gentle. He's had a beautiful life. He's happy, healthy, loved. I saw him. At the school. I didn't approach him. I would never do that without your permission. But I saw him playing, laughing, running to you. And I knew I'd made the right choice. Silence settled over the table. What do you need from us? Michael asked. I want to hold a press conference. Expose what Victoria has done. Show the world the kind of person she really is. Naomi took a breath. But I won't do it without your consent. This involves Elijah even indirectly. If you want me to leave you out of it, I will. David and Michael looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them, the wordless communication of two people who had built a life together. Then David turned back to Naomi. We'll do it, he said. Not for you, for Elijah. If someone's been stalking our son, the world needs to know. Thank you. Naomi's voice broke completely. Thank you. Michael squeezed her hand. You gave us the greatest gift of our lives. This is the least we can do. The press conference was scheduled for the following week. Marcus's PR team arranged everything: the venue, the media invitations, the security. They prepared statements, organized evidence, and briefed everyone on what to expect. But nothing could prepare Naomi for the moment she stepped up to that podium. The room was packed, cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions before she'd even opened her mouth. She looked out at the crowd and felt her knees weaken. Then she remembered Trey, Elijah, Maya, all the people she was fighting for. She gripped the podium and began. "My name is Naomi Carter. You've read about me. You've seen the headlines. You've heard people call me a gold digger, a mentally unstable con artist, a woman who abandoned her own child." She paused. "Today, I'm here to tell you the truth. All of it. And to expose the person who's been trying to destroy me." She spoke for 20 minutes. She told them about Victoria's campaign, the leaked medical records, the private investigator, the photographs of Elijah taken without his parents' consent. She showed them the evidence documents, photographs, payment records, linking Victoria to Anthony Connors. And then she introduced David and Michael Torres. They stood beside her, dignified and calm, and told the world about discovering that their son had been stalked. "Our family has been violated," David said. "Our child has been used as a weapon in a war he has nothing to do with, and the person responsible is Victoria Hale." The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted over each other. But Naomi stood steady. She had told her truth. The rest was out of her hands. The fallout was immediate and devastating for Victoria. Within hours, the story was everywhere. National news, international outlets. Social media exploded with condemnation of Victoria Hale and support for Naomi. Victoria's lawyers issued a statement denying the allegations. But the evidence was overwhelming. Payment records, photographs, testimony from Anthony Connors himself, who had turned state's witness in exchange for immunity. 3 days after the press conference, Victoria Hale was arrested for conspiracy to violate privacy laws and stalking of a minor. She made bail, but the damage was done. Her reputation was destroyed. Her social circle abandoned her. The Ellington Industries Board voted unanimously to remove her from any position of influence, and her custody petition was dismissed with prejudice. It was over. Naomi stood in the penthouse kitchen, watching Trey eat his breakfast when Marcus walked in. "The judge signed the final order this morning," he said. "Full custody. No more challenges. Victoria's prohibited from contacting Trey or you for the rest of her life." Naomi set down her coffee cup. "It's really over. It's really over." She didn't know what to do with the relief that flooded through her. For so long she'd been fighting, running, surviving. She'd forgotten what it felt like to simply be. Trey looked up from his oatmeal. "Mimi happy?" he asked. She smiled through tears. "Mimi's very happy baby." That night, after Trey was asleep, Marcus found her on the balcony. The city glittered below them, millions of lights stretching toward the horizon. The air was cold but clear, and for the first time in months, Naomi felt like she could breathe. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked. "Everything. Nothing." She laughed softly. "I don't know how to stop fighting. It's like my brain is still waiting for the next attack." "It'll pass. Eventually you'll learn to trust the quiet." "Did you, after Helena?" He was silent for a moment. "I'm learning. With help." She looked at him. At this man who had trusted her when he had no reason to. Who had stood beside her through the worst of it. Who had never once wavered. "Marcus, I know what you're going to say." He stepped closer. "That this isn't appropriate. That you work for me. That it's too complicated, too soon, too much." "Is that what I was going to say?" "Isn't it?" She smiled. "Maybe I was going to say thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me, when no one else did. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." She reached up and touched his face. "For giving me a home when I didn't know I needed one." Marcus covered her hand with his. "You gave me something too," he said. "What?" "Hope. That life could be good again. That love could exist after loss." His voice roughened. "I didn't think I'd ever feel that again. And then you walked into a nursery and hummed a hymn and everything changed." "Marcus." "I love you, Naomi." The words hung in the air between them. She should have been scared. Should have pulled back. Should have protected herself the way she'd learned to do. But she was tired of protecting herself from good things. "I love you too," she whispered. He kissed her, then gentle and slow, and for the first time in her life, Naomi felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 6 months later, the Whisper Foundation held its inaugural gala. The ballroom was filled with donors, advocates, and supporters. The walls were lined with photographs of single mothers who had received assistance, women who had been given second chances, just like Naomi. Naomi stood at the podium wearing a simple black dress that Maya had helped her choose. Trey sat in the front row with Marcus, his lion toy still clutched in his arms. "When I started this foundation," Naomi began, "I didn't know if anyone would care. I was a woman with a complicated past, trying to help other women with complicated pasts. I wasn't sure the world would see us as worth saving." She paused. "But here's what I've learned. Everyone is worth saving. Every woman who made impossible choices. Every mother who gave up a child to protect them. Every person who survived something they shouldn't have survived and is still here, still fighting, still hoping." She looked at Trey, at Marcus, at Maya sitting beside them with tears in her eyes. "I gave up my son because I thought I had nothing to offer him. But I was wrong. I had love. I had strength. I had the ability to rise even when everything in me wanted to stay down." Her voice strengthened. "And so do you. Every single one of you. No matter what you've been through, no matter what they've told you about yourself, you are worth more than your worst moment. You are capable of more than your deepest fear." The room was silent. "This foundation exists because I believe that. Because I lived that. And because I will spend the rest of my life making sure other women know it too." The applause started slowly, then built into a wave that crashed over her. She stepped down from the podium and walked straight to Marcus. He pulled her into his arms. "You were incredible," he said. "I was terrified. You were both. That's what makes it courage." She laughed against his chest, and for a moment, everything was perfect. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at the penthouse. Naomi recognized the handwriting on the envelope immediately. She'd seen it once before, on the back of a photograph. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a drawing. Crayon on white paper. A house with a yellow sun-green grass and 4 stick figures, 2 tall, 2 small. In a child's wobbly handwriting at the bottom, "My family." And beneath that, in adult script, "He asked about you. We told him you loved him very much. When he's ready, he wants to meet you. David and Michael." Naomi pressed the drawing to her chest and cried. Not from sadness. From something that felt like completion. A year after the custody battle ended, Naomi Carter stood in a small cafe in Brooklyn waiting. David and Michael had arranged everything. They'd prepared Elijah, slowly, carefully explaining that his birth mother wanted to meet him, not to take him away, but to thank him for existing. Elijah had thought about it for weeks. Then he said yes. Naomi saw him before he saw her. 7 years old now. Taller. His curls were cut shorter, but his smile was the same, the smile from the photograph. The smile that had haunted her dreams for months. He walked toward her table, David and Michael a few steps behind. He stopped in front of her. "Are you Naomi?" he asked. "Yes, baby. I'm Naomi." He studied her face for a long moment. "You look like me." "You look like your grandmother." She smiled through tears. "She would have loved you so much." Elijah sat down across from her. My dad said you were sick when I was born, that you couldn't take care of me. That's right. Are you better now? Naomi nodded. I am. It took a long time, but I am. Good. Elijah pulled something out of his pocket, a paper airplane slightly crumpled. I made this for you. Naomi took it with trembling hands. Why a paper airplane? Because my dad said you gave me wings so I could fly to my family. He paused. I wanted to give you wings too. Naomi couldn't speak. She just reached across the table and hugged him. And for the first time in 7 years, she held her son. It wasn't the ending she had imagined. It was better. On the night before Naomi's wedding, she sat alone in the penthouse nursery. Trey was asleep in his bed, 5 years old now, verbal and vibrant, and nothing like the screaming toddler she had first met. His lion toy was still there, though threadbare from years of love. She had walked into this room as a cleaning woman, with nothing but a thermos of bad coffee and a heart full of buried pain. She was leaving it as something else entirely. A mother, a partner, a survivor. Marcus found her there just as he had so many nights before. Can't sleep, he asked. Too much to think about. He sat beside her on the small couch. Any regrets? Not a single one. He took her hand. Tomorrow you'll be my wife. I know. And Trey will officially be your son. She looked at the sleeping boy. He's always been my son. The paper just makes it legal. Marcus smiled. You know what he told me yesterday. What? He said he's glad you heard him crying that first day. He said if you hadn't come into the nursery, he would have stayed lost forever. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. I heard him because I recognized the sound, she said. The sound of someone screaming for help and being afraid no one would answer. You answered. I always will. The wedding was small, intimate, held in the penthouse garden with only the people who mattered most. Maya stood as Naomi's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. David and Michael were there with Elijah, who watched the whole thing with wide eyes and kept asking if he could catch the bouquet. Dolores attended too, though she pretended to be there only to supervise the catering. When the officiant asked if there were any objections, Trey shouted, I don't object, so loudly that everyone laughed. Marcus and Naomi exchanged vows they had written themselves. His, you walked into my son's life and taught him how to love again. Then you walked into mine and did the same thing. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. Hers. I came to this house to clean floors. I never expected to find a family. But you and Trey gave me something I'd stopped believing existed a place where I belong. I promised to protect that, to fight for it, to never stop showing up no matter how hard it gets. When they kissed, Trey ran forward and wrapped his arms around both of them. Family hug, he shouted. And so it was. 2 years later, Naomi Carter Ellington stood on a stage in Washington, D.C., accepting an award for her work with the Whisper Foundation. The organization had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. Thousands of women helped, dozens of chapters across the country. A voice for the voiceless. I stand here today, she said, not as someone who overcame her past, but as someone who integrated it. My pain is not separate from my purpose. It is my purpose. Every struggle I faced, every loss I survived, every piece of myself I had to bury, just to keep breathing, all of it led me here. To this moment. To this work. To this life. She looked out at the audience. If you're watching this, and you're in the middle of your hardest chapter, I want you to know it doesn't end here. The story keeps going. And sometimes the best parts come after you think it's over. She smiled. Sometimes the best parts come when you stop running from who you are and start becoming who you were meant to be. Standing ovation. In the front row, Marcus held Trey on his lap. Beside them sat Maya now, a college graduate with her own bright future ahead. And next to Maya sat Elijah, who visited every month now and called Naomi by her name. Just Naomi, not Mom, but it was enough. It was more than enough. Naomi stepped off the stage and walked straight to her family. Trey reached for her. "Mimi, you were so good." "Thank you, baby." Marcus kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of us." Maya hugged her tight. "Mom and Dad would have been so proud." "I know." Naomi wiped her eyes. "I feel them. Every day." Elijah hung back slightly, uncertain as always about his place in this strange extended family. Naomi turned to him. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for inviting me." He paused. "That thing you said, about the best parts coming later. Did you mean it? Every word?" He nodded slowly. "Good, because I think my best parts are still coming too." Naomi pulled him into a hug. 2 sons, 2 families, 1 heart big enough to hold them all. They walked out of the auditorium together into a spring evening full of possibility. The city buzzed around them, indifferent and eternal. But Naomi didn't need the city to notice her anymore. She had everything she needed. A woman who had once been invisible had built a life that mattered. A mother who had once given up her child had found a way to love without limits. A survivor who had buried her truth had learned that truth was not a weapon to fear, but a light to follow. She looked at her family, the one she had been given and the one she had chosen, and she felt something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. The knowledge that whatever came next, she would face it standing, because that was who she was now. Not the maid who cleaned floors. Not the broken woman who forgot her own child. Not the scandal in the headlines. Just Naomi, mother, wife, survivor, light. And that was more than enough.